Hello everyone. Thank you for joining the online open house for the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments at 4 Welland Road and 179 Ontario Street. My name is Natasha MacDonald. I'm the planner managing this file for the city. In attendance tonight, we have the property owner Ray and his agent Dan Romenko. And some of you are in attendance here to ask questions, raise comments. The meeting is not being live streamed, unfortunately, but if you have any questions or comments following the open house, you can submit them to myself, either via email, telephone, or in written format. And my contact information is at the bottom of this page, and it'll be at the end of the presentation as well. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to present the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for information purposes. I will present the proposed application as well as the planning and consideration process. And then after staff's presentation, the agent will deliver a presentation about the proposal. Following these presentations, I will facilitate a Q&A for those participating in the Zoom meeting. And all questions and comments discussed tonight will be recorded and added to the file for consideration. The subject properties for Welland Road and 179 Ontario Street are at the northwest corner of Ontario Street and Welland Road. The property contains an existing fourplex dwelling at 4 Welland Road, with the lands at 179 Ontario Street being vacant. The surrounding area includes a mix of uses at varying densities, ranging from detached dwellings to apartment buildings and small-scale commercial uses. The city recently received the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications, and they were deemed complete on March 15th, 2024. Under the Planning Act, the city must accept and process complete planning applications. As part of this process, the applications are circulated to various city and external agencies for their review. The Planning Act also requires that 2 public meetings be held for these types of applications, tonight being the first. Holding an open house for complete planning applications does not indicate support from the city for an application, and no part of the proposed amendments have been approved at this time. During the second public meeting, which will be held within the next couple months, City Council will consider the applications and make their decision. This proposal is to construct a 3-story, 12-unit apartment building at 179 Ontario Street. The existing fourplex at 4 Welland Road would remain as part of this proposal. The 2 buildings are proposed to share an access off Welland Road, parking area, and other site amenities. The proposal also includes 15 parking spaces for vehicles and 6 parking spaces for bicycles. To facilitate the development, the applicant is requesting official plan and zoning bylaw amendments so that the land designations for both properties match, as well as to permit some site-specific items. Shown here is the proposed site plan for the development as a whole. And shown here is a markup of the site plan that illustrates the 3 different lots that are proposed to facilitate the development. So the area in blue is proposed to be the lot for the apartment building at 179 Ontario Street. The area in yellow is proposed to be the lot for the fourplex at 4 Welland Road. And the area in green is proposed to be a new lot where the shared access and parking area will be located. Shown here is the proposed building elevations for the apartment building along Ontario Street. So in terms of the land use designations, the city's official plan currently designates the property for Welland Road as low-density residential and 179 Ontario Street as mixed use. The low-density residential designation permits a range of residential uses such as detached, townhouse, and fourplex dwellings at a density range between 20 to 32 units per hectare of land. The mixed-use designation permits a range of medium-density residential and commercial uses, including apartment buildings, supporting a minimum density of 100 people and jobs per hectare of land. The proposal requests to redesignate 4 Welland Road to mixed use, which would match the designation of 179 Ontario Street and facilitate the proposed concept. The proposal also requests to add special policies for the lands to permit a standalone parking lot to serve the 2 buildings, as well as restrict auto-related uses. In terms of zoning, the city zoning bylaw zones the property for Welland Road as low-density residential suburban neighborhood, R1. This zone permits a range of residential uses such as detached, semi-detached, and townhouse dwellings. The existing fourplex dwelling is considered legal non-conforming. The property 179 Ontario Street is zoned medium-density mixed use, M1. This zone permits a range of residential and commercial uses, including apartment buildings. The proposal requests to rezone 4 Wellandville Road to medium-density mixed use, M1, to match the zoning of 179 Ontario Street, which would facilitate the proposed concept. A special provision is also proposed to address site-specific items, which will be highlighted in the next slides. The requested site-specific zoning relief for the apartment building lot, outlined in blue, includes reduced parking ratio of 0.75 spaces per unit for the apartment building, being 9 spaces for the 12 units, reduced lot frontage of 16 meters, reduced lot area of 40 square meters per unit, increased encroachment of 1.5 meters into a side yard setback for exterior staircases and landings, reduced interior side yard setback of 1 meter to the proposed shared amenities lot, reduced rear yard setback of 1.5 meters for the building to the proposed shared amenities lot, and reduced rear yard setback of 0 meters for balconies to the proposed shared amenities lot. The requested site-specific zoning relief for the fourplex lot, outlined in yellow, includes reduced rear yard setback of 2.5 meters to the proposed shared amenities lot, and reduced interior side yard setback of 0.5 meters to the proposed shared amenities lot. The requested site-specific zoning relief for the proposed shared amenities lot, which is outlined in green, includes permitting a standalone parking lot for the purpose of serving the proposed apartment building and existing fourplex, permitting vehicle and bicycle parking to be located on a separate lot than the residential uses, and reducing the landscape buffer along the western lot line. The applicant is also proposing that certain auto-related uses be prohibited on the subject lands. Following tonight's meeting, if you want to review the materials submitted with these applications, you can do so by visiting www.stcatharines.ca/development and go to the folder labeled 4 Wellandville Road and 179 Ontario Street. At this time, staff are looking for comments from the public regarding this proposal. All feedback collected is being compiled and will be shared with staff and City Council. Later this spring, staff will prepare a recommendation report for this application, which will be made public prior to it being considered by Council. As mentioned, this will be considered by Council during a second public meeting, which will be held at a later date. Notice will be mailed out to the surrounding properties and a sign will be posted on site. If you wish to be notified of this meeting, please reach out to me and I'm happy to keep you updated. So thank you to everyone who tuned into tonight's online open house for the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment at 4 Wellandville Road and 179 Ontario Street. The city appreciates your participation in this process and welcomes your comments. So please submit any questions, comments, or concerns to myself via email or phone. You can also submit your comments in writing to City Hall. And I'll now hand it over to the agents at Better Neighborhoods for their presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Natasha. Appreciate your presentation. It was fairly thorough and hopefully mine won't be too much of a duplicate. So I'll just share my screen here and we can get started. So hopefully everybody can see that.
Yep.
Okay, great. So just again, not to be too redundant, I just wanted to sort of give our perspective and vision for the redevelopment of these two properties. As I've already indicated, the current lot configuration is a little irregular, and both properties are currently operating to address the needs of the present property with respect to providing access over 179 to 4 Wellandville. There's some mature trees on the property, and I'll show some photos of those. So this is the 4th Street frontage. As you can see, there's very attractive 4 Wellandville fourplex on the left. You can sort of make out the driveway in between that and 175 Ontario Street on the right. I'm sure most people are familiar with this corner. And this is a mixed-use building here on the corner. I don't believe it's currently being used for daycare any longer, but it was certainly zoned for that purpose. And this is the the lot or the westerly view from Ontario Street of the vacant parcel. And just to the north of that, along Ontario Street, is the house that resides at 181 Ontario Street. Across the street from there, we've got another residential dwelling, which is, I believe, a few apartments in there, and then we've got this 3-story apartment across the street as well. And then there's just a little look down the street. So we are proposing a 3-story apartment with a total of 12 units. And we want to maintain and preserve the existing 4-plex building. And the idea with proposing a common element condominium is that because of the configuration of the site and the need to distribute parking and manage landscaping and bike storage and refuse collection and all those things, it's a better way to address and deal with those issues, given the fact that these properties are so intrinsically linked together. And it provides an opportunity for a professional management company to look after the interests of those properties and distribute the expenses accordingly. The other big thing about arranging things this way is that we're not proposing any new driveways, and so we're maintaining the existing one. We are having to widen it out a little bit at the Welland Vale frontage, just so that we can permit cars to, pass each other and not pose any conflicts. But the other objective, of course, was to maintain the mature trees that were on the site. In particular, if you can see my cursor, this one here in the back, which is quite a nice tree, you can see how we've configured the parking together with some retaining walls to deal with the grade change and hopefully preserve the roots. At the time we did this design work, we engaged an arborist to provide some comment as to how we would do that. And what we've proposed, we believe will preserve that tree. This is the site plan, which we kind of saw before. I won't go into any details. Again, you've seen this as well. So I kind of already touched upon the benefits of the common element condo. Not sure that I need to kind of go into that any further. But you can see how the common element condo has been configured. You'll notice it's a little irregular, not just to address the parking and landscaping directly behind Welland Vale, but also there's a little whoops, what happened? A little angle here, which is characterized by the need to include a private service from 181 Ontario Street, which goes through the driveway entrance and serves Welland Vale as well as 183 in behind. During our initial investigation, we did some work to provide the information for the FSR. We had some trouble cameraing it and getting that through, and I think the service is quite old. Thankfully, it's still functioning, but the intent here is to, through the use of the condominium and the redevelopment of the properties, is to replace that service and ensure through the condominium that that service can be maintained to the benefit of all users. So that's in our view a very powerful benefit for the neighboring properties. The site is really well located with respect to providing active transportation options. We have the proximity to the 4th Avenue big box centers within a walkable distance. To the north, we have Fresco and other daily needs that can be met, and of course, within a very close proximity to the downtown. So that's part of the justification and reasons for seeking a parking reduction here. And I think that this is a very good example of building residential type building that will offer some benefits to residents that don't own cars or want to own cars and can afford to live without one. I think Natasha's done a pretty good job getting into the details of the official plan amendment, so I won't belabor that, but Ontario Street property is already mixed use. We're just basically rounding out this corner. And then adding some special provisions to kind of protect the neighboring properties from any noxious uses such as auto-related uses, and to really recognize this common element portion of the property, which is, I'll say, a relatively new vehicle that's being used. I think in this application, it's well suited, but clearly the official plan hadn't anticipated that. Once again, rounding out the zoning for the same purpose, and just changing the uses to site specific. I think Natasha's already gone through these, so I won't. I know I've got slides that show all of the rest of them, but I think what's kind of useful here is that the ones that I've identified in green are the variances to the zoning that are really as a result of the common element lot creation, which is to say that the setbacks and some of those other provisions that need variances from are solely as a result of the fact that the lot configuration of the lots have been reduced in size. And so it's frankly, from our perspective, very much a technical ask. So, you know, reducing parking obviously is not included in that, but the lot area is, the front area is, front lot reduction is simply just a function of the existing site. We're working with that. Encroachment for exterior staircase and landings. We don't believe those pose any negative impacts to neighboring properties, especially considering the grade change on the north. And the south actually. And then reduced setback for the balcony. There is balconies proposed on the back and the front, none of which are proposed on the side yards to protect privacy concerns. And once again, that reduction in setback is simply because of where the condominium common element lot is being proposed. It's in the same way, we've got reductions in rear yards here. Oops. And then another reduction, landscape buffer, standalone parking, and bike parking, which isn't on the subject properties, and nor is it within a certain distance of the front door of the principal entrance. So we have created a bike shed here, along with another shed to manage the landscaping tools and other provisions that would be required for storage externally. This is where the refuse is intended to be. Not to say that it'll look like this, it could be Molochs or something of that, but it is intended to be private collection. And then lastly, just once again, just to prohibit any automobile related uses. So really, in just closing, we believe that the development is compatible with the adjacent land uses in an M1 zone. It's permitted. We're not asking for any height variances or anything like that. A lot of the variances that we are seeking are a result of this common element condo. We are providing new housing units, which I think is a very positive thing, especially in this time where housing is in quite degree of demand. Common element condo is a very good option. Condominiums make for good neighbors, and largely because there's a funding requirement that's legislated to maintain those properties in perpetuity. And this site is really fortunate to be close to the amenities and providing active transportation options for future residents. There are no new driveway accesses being proposed, and the nice thing about this is that we're hiding all the cars in the rear yards. So from the street, we've got very good urban design, and that improves the walkability for the neighborhood. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Dan. So that concludes our presentations. Now we do have 4 members of the public that have registered, so I'm going to go to each person and you will have an opportunity to provide comments, ask questions if you want. You don't have to, but we'll start with Theos.
Thanks. I have to say that I hope that I'll be able to think a little further about this and some additional comments I might have. But again, nothing personal here. I know there is a interest for increasing, building spaces and so on. I am the owner of 175. I have one question that has to do with the encroachment towards the walkway that it is at the back of the building there. I do not think that that this new design can take away that walkway. But is the distance from the walkway to the building, respected in this design? Because in your lines, they're crossing over the walkway, which means we won't be able to enter the building.
I'm not sure if I understood you 100%. So you're the owner of 175, correct?
Yes.
And the walkway that you're referring to.
And you can see it in your designs in the back, but I see your line that probably characterizes the 3 feet or 4 feet what the city allows. It goes over that walkway. So, it will be very tight in that area. So that is concerning to me. That this is not a small building, is 12 units. There will be a lot of traffic in there. So is this within the allowable distance from the property line, or?
Yeah, I'm still having trouble understanding if you're referring to a pedestrian walkway or the variance that we're seeking, just to be clear, is the variance of the platform structure or the entrance on the south side. And we're seeking a total of 0.3 meters of relief there. So it's a foot in dimension. So if that's of any help to you.
Right. What I'm referring to is the walk. You can see the lines of a walkway in the back of 175, right?
Are you talking about like this area? Are you talking about the side?
I'm talking about where exactly there.
Okay, so your side yard?
Further, yeah. There is a walkway in the back of 175.
Okay.
Which is there, and I don't think you can remove that walkway from there legally. So it's a legal walkway. So and is cemented. So this will the building be 3 feet away, or what is the regulation? I'm not sure whether the regulation is 3 or 4 feet away from that to allow like a civil, people's traffic. A 12 unit building will have quite a lot of traffic in there. All people will be entering there between the 2 buildings, right? All entrances is through that area, isn't it?
So this is the backyard of 175 Welland Vale. This is Christina. And I think what he's referring to is you've got your landing in between the 2. Exactly, yes. And so it's a ridiculous amount of space in between the 2 houses. And I think what CEO is trying to say is, hey, we've got a high density traffic of people entering and exiting the building there. And if you look at 175 Welland Vale, they've also got their exit and entrance there. So
in the back, yes.
Yeah, design-wise, that's problematic.
So just in terms of what the zoning bylaw requires, so the zoning bylaw requires a 3-meter setback to the building, which is being achieved. And typically landings are permitted to encroach 1.2 meters into a required yard. So the 1.6 meter setback is just a slight larger encroachment than what's typically required, but just to kind of compare it to to other dwelling types and other kind of residential areas. The standard interior side yard setback is 1.2 meters, and that provides enough space for, like travel for access. So just to kind of get an idea of what the standard requirements are.
Yeah,
in terms
what
of
I'm saying is that there is a builded or a cement walkway.
right.
which is
Yes, you have
legally
a
there, right? So it's
yep,
not
on your
1.6
property. Yep.
meters. It is not 1.6 meters. It's 1.6 within, is over that walkway. So essentially, much less than
no.
1.6. No.
So the 1.6 meters is within the private property of 179 Ontario. That's
Yes.
fully on their property. It doesn't go into your property. So this is the property line here.
No,
So
I
it won't
understand, but
encroach. Yeah.
isn't the walkway that is built there currently, it was over legally utilized space. So this is, I think it's very tight there. It's,
Okay, understood.
I mean, essentially it's within, would be about a meter or so. The landing is really, I mean, it's very tight there. I mean, that's something that I guess it can be.
Well, it can be adjusted, and that's the whole idea of, I think, of this
Yeah.
process, right? We've got the architect, and this is an issue that you're finding with your lot. It invades, essentially. I think typically as well, when you're looking at entrances to buildings, they typically are facing the street, whereas you've got
Yeah.
a busy public entrance right in your backyard. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's an issue you have with design.
Understood. Yeah, we
I would have
understand that concern.
expected, exactly, I would have expected the entrance would be in the front part of it on Ontario Street rather than in that very tight spot. I mean, design wise, I think this is problematic. Beyond that, I mean, I don't know whether we will have any sewage problems. I believe the 175, I am not sure whether the 175 sewer connects to the rest of the drainage. I mean, the concern I would have with a 12-unit building there, not that I'm supportive for whatever the neighbors want to do, Ray, and so on, but what I'm worried is that this is an area with very high traffic. I mean, people understand the very high traffic. Welland Vale is frequently very hard to get into. I find that when you try to turn onto Welland Avenue, there is a long line of cars at the busy times, and unless the traffic light is created, there is a very high speed traffic in that area, and not having enough parking in the back, it may be a problem, and it may be a dangerous situation that traffic has to be kept in mind. I assume adding another 12 units there will be at least another 12 cars that will be going in and out multiple times a day. We have to be thoughtful about that. Are there adjustments that are being made there to accommodate all that? Because right now it is dangerous as it is, frequently when it's high traffic time.
Sure, if I can just respond. I mean, I can't speak to what the city might be looking at in terms of road upgrades or traffic lights or anything like that, and I don't expect they are actually in this area. But I can kind of make a comment that maybe you can clarify for me, because you were suggesting that there'd be 12 additional cars for the 12-unit apartment, but that's actually not what we're proposing. And part of the benefit of this parking reduction is to minimize the number of vehicles entering and exiting the site at any one time. There are a total of 15 parking spaces, so that would be the maximum. So I mean, I don't know if that helps perhaps put that into context a little bit, but
well, the street is being used as parking in that area, and a lot of traffic that comes down from Welland, usually it gets into Welland Vale, and frequently with very high speed. So I think it's as is now. It will be just busier. People won't be able to turn on to Welland Avenue easily and safely the way it is if the car if you are providing less parking lots within your yard, that means more cars will be parked on the street. And it will be, I think, not a safe situation as it is. It's very busy.
Mhm. I mean, I live in this, well, I walk by this frequently, and I can certainly attest to some of the cars traveling
Yeah,
off
it's
Glendale. And I can appreciate what you're saying. I do recall one of the things that one of the urban design planners at the city had mentioned, and there was some talk about perhaps extending the sidewalk along the north side of Welland Vale, sort of in this area, and doing a bit of a bump out. And I think that would help slow cars down, but it is a bit of an awkward intersection for sure. Now again, I can't speak to any plans that the city might have, but I know they are thinking about it. And I think that, you know, given the fact that there's a larger turning radius, it does permit cars to exit off of Welland and onto Wellandville with some speed. I've experienced that myself, so.
Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely touch base with the transportation staff about that sidewalk.
Yeah, thanks. It was actually Scott Ritchie who mentioned it to me. I
Gotcha.
don't know if he's still involved in that capacity, but. And Scott has some personal experience with living here, actually.
Yes, yeah,
So.
great. Okay, thank you. Yos, did you have any other questions or comments at this time? Earlier you had mentioned, you know, you might want some more time to kind of think about the proposal and what was presented tonight. You know, the city's accepting comments, questions throughout this process. So if anything else comes to mind, you can certainly reach out to myself either by phone or email. You have my email address now, so.
Yeah, I just don't know to what extent this process is related to the issues that relate to the stability of the building of 175. I mean, I myself, I am concerned the fact that this is an older building, and digging to build a 12-unit apartment complex next door, it may actually generate some significant stability issues. It's an old building. So there might be a concern about that we have to think about.
Yeah, and with respect to that, Theos, it's not uncommon for builders to undertake assessments of neighboring properties before they begin construction. So I would expect that type of approach would occur here, and it removes any potential liability or issues for both the homeowner and the builder in that respect. So I do appreciate, I own an older home and have owned older homes, and you know, you operate with kid gloves on them because you know, they can be a little fragile, even though they're generally made much better than newer homes. But anyways, good point to mention. And I think for the purposes of you know, construction here and the foundation, and you're concerned with the proximity of the landing, the foundation of the building is actually at 3 meters. So it is, you know, 10 plus whatever side yard you have away from your foundation. So it's a good 12 feet, I would think, just for your own reference.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Gary.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a few things really quick. Just the stuff that would probably affect us would be, and you know, Ray and I already talked pretty quick about it. He was kind enough to pop over and just discuss it.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Gary, can you just tell
yeah,
me where you're at?
Yeah, we're at 6 Wallenville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're just on the other side of the existing fourplex that's already there.
Yep.
So yeah, some of the stuff that'll end up affecting us will be like the retaining wall that has to get. There's like an old concrete retaining wall that's there right now. I believe it's planned to remove and replace it with like a new some sort of retaining wall. I'm assuming like precast block or something like that. So Like they mentioned, you know, there could be some foundation damage and stuff that might come up with installing it. Like you mentioned, it's an older home, but you know, that's just one thing that might come up with us. What was the other one? It's a garage. It's got to get taken down there. So I think Ray might have mentioned, you know, there might be a new fence or something that's got to go in to replace that because it kind of acts like the fence for us right now. Another thing would be like storm drainage. I'm not like this one's more of a concept site plan right now, so I don't know if there's a proposed storm drainage plan. Because even right now, sort of the water kind of runs between the homes a bit and out, but there's not really proper drainage, I would say. A lot of times we've had issues with them plowing the snow and kind of putting it on our side of the lot and then it melting and all that. And
runs down.
yeah, and it just creates just sort of a bit of a mess. And Ray was kind enough to start plowing it the other way, but then you know there'd be a condo here to talk about. So I just didn't know if any storm drainage considerations were put in, that kind of thing.
So that's something that will be ironed out at the site plan stage. So should the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications get approved by council within the next couple of months, this type of development is also subject to site plan approval. And that's when we really get into the nuts and bolts of a development. And one thing that absolutely is taken care of is ensuring that there's adequate drainage for the subject property, make sure it's not going to negatively impact the surrounding area. So that's definitely something that will be taken care of if it gets to that stage.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll just add, Gary, that oftentimes through that process, you know, you're going to find that the redevelopment of something next door is only going to improve your grading situation. You know, we're proposing essentially, you know, like curbs or some sort of detention along the edges of the parking structure to contain the water. So the likelihood of anything going between the properties or overland as it currently does will be removed in the future as part of that site plan approval process.
Sounds good. And yeah, that would help out. So yeah, once there's you know, if there's more of a design on storm water and that retaining wall and see how that affects things, that'd be good to see. And I do appreciate any effort that's made to keep that big tree that's there, because that's yeah, it's a pretty landmark tree back there, right? So I do appreciate that. Do you have anything else?
Recognize that as well.
That's it for me.
Great, thank you very much. We'll go to Christina next.
Just unmuting here. Hey, okay, I have a lot of questions. So, and they're going to be technical questions. They're also design questions. So this will hit City and Daniel at the same time. So I guess the first question is, why so big? Yes, I understand it's a commercial development, and as a lot owner and developer, you want to maximize your building, right? However, if you look on the west side of Ontario Street, we don't have those apartment buildings. So you have maybe more of a patterning of triplexes, even your fourplex and so on. The apartment building that you referred to is on the east side and it's not directly across from the property. So can you guys explain that one?
So I mean, as planners, we look at for opportunities to you know, obviously improve the neighborhood, but you know, and so from a design perspective, you know, you want to do things like you know, having buildings front the street, getting cars off the front yards, that type of thing. You know, and the other part of looking at concept development is just developing the highest and best use for the property. You know, there is certainly a need for housing. This is an underutilized property, and I realize that there currently isn't a context for an apartment on this side of the street as there is on the other side of the street, but through the official plan policies, it is the city's intention to permit mixed use within the framework of those guidelines along both sides of the street, all the way up Ontario Street. So it's a directional thing. We see this as an incremental type of development. There isn't really a height restriction here, but it's you know, it's keeping keeping within the limit and development constraints that are available on the property. So that's kind of how we were looking at this.
Okay.
Context.
Just several responses to that one. So we understand the nature of infill, and when we talk to the neighbors on Welland Vale, they all understand the nature of infill, right? And that's a trend, you know, there's a housing need and stuff like that. But again, 12 units is pretty major. So from what I understand, there's just, again, from chatting with people within the area, a lot of them were saying that they would find 6 units more reasonable, or they'd find 8 units more reasonable. So again, why 12 units? And this is going to impact stuff like parking and traffic and stuff like that in terms of questions.
Yeah. Well, I think the intent really is just to keep it to 3 stories. And the reason why we've added effectively 3 more units is that we've raised the building up to get lower level units. So once again, we're addressing the housing from that perspective and trying to contain it within a built form that isn't really too much out of scale with any of the neighboring properties.
But it is in terms of, again, the west side of Ontario Street. If you look at all the houses, they're usually single dwelling houses. They may have been developed into apartments, but they're dwellings, right? They're not a condo and they're not an apartment.
Just for context, so this corridor of Ontario Street is designated and zoned mixed use. So
Okay.
apartment buildings are permitted use. And the built form and the height of the apartment is largely within what is already legal or permitted in the city.
get it.
Just
Yeah.
for reference.
Yeah. However, and this is where the city gets kind of strange, because yes, you have your zoning and your mixed use and so on, but what about urban design? Because these questions are more urban design type questions. Again, we're not talking about the practicality of filling in the lot and fitting setbacks and frontages and stuff like that. But again, just if you're looking at the patterning of the existing current residences, this is a bit of an anomaly.
Well, I mean, like, just to give you an example of how we were being conscientious about the urban design and some of the, if I can just share my screen a little bit here for you a second here. So can you see the site plan? So,
Yeah.
I mean, we've got this terrific but very messy walnut tree, I think, out front, which straddles the property line between these 2 properties. And although the zoning would permit us to go within 3 meters, you know, we're looking at this and saying, well, that would contextually look a little unusual. So we kept it back, and a large part of that was just to try and preserve this tree. Like you know, I mean, I don't know how much life it's got. It's fairly old, but we certainly don't want to compromise it to the extent where we lose it. And then, you know, based on that, I mean, we're trying to be a little consistent with some of the frontages, even though we've got a very long, deep, irregular shaped lot to work with. The zoning is set up in a manner that if you have a nice rectangular piece of property, it's easy, you know, or easier. I mean, it's, you know, you're still trying to design to a box, but, you know, these are the kind of contextual things. We did provide, you know, front doors and urban design features of the building so that, you know, there's some life, but getting back to the reason why there's this landing on the side is that, you know, the irregular shape of the building to meet the geometry of the lot provided a complex building code issue with providing access at either the back or the front. And so it's, you know, we worked with an architect to come up with a plan that could distribute access to the building through the units on each floor, and also provide the pedestrian access through the property from the back to the front, so that there was a relationship of the building to the street. And I mean, part of this is just really avoiding the opportunity to have any cars or driveways coming off of Ontario Street. Now, I know that probably would have been a difficult thing to do because it's a regional road and right turn lane, but
what I'm,
It's
yeah, I
still
think,
the entitlement of the property to have access, so.
yeah, okay. I think we're kind of missing points here. So if you look across the street over onto where Welland and Ontario are, there's Montebello, there's Dirksen, those areas. You've
Mhm.
got developments that came in that are townhousing. And it's townhousing that's too, like it fits that whole, we're not exactly heritage because like we're outside of the heritage zone for downtown, we're outside of the Queen Street heritage, right? But again, we're talking design and fitting the existing current residences. We've got an apartment building that's in there, but it doesn't really take into account, again, we've got the single dwellings, we've got a pattern of housing, a look, if you would say. Again, if you look at those townhouses that are across the street, they fit, right? Someone developed with kind of a strong density. So they're very narrow houses, they're very high houses, but the development fits. This one doesn't. So I think that's the question that a lot of people are getting to. And again, that's where they're talking, 8 or 6 units or 4 units, something that actually fits.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that, if those townhouses were to be built again today, it probably wouldn't look like that. I don't know, how successful they were. It took them about 10 years to sell all of those, economics notwithstanding, but, part of the reason for this form of building is that it's catering to what the market needs. And yeah, I mean, I can respect the fact you'd want less units, but I don't see this as an overbuild. And I think just to get back a little bit to the urban design, I mean, it's tricky to, like, you can see the irregularity of the building to match the irregularity of the property. Architecturally, that poses some challenges, but it was the intent of the direction there is to soften it and use something that was sympathetic in terms of style and materials with the adjacent neighboring buildings. Now, we haven't completed the drawings. This is sort of still just at the high level concept. And I'm sure there will be some further refinement to it, but based on kind of what we had to work with, I think we've achieved a good fit with the neighboring properties in terms of like matching pitched roofs and some of the style. So
Okay. Question, and Natasha, I think this one will sort of need your input as well. I know that Ontario Street is M1, so it's mixed use. I think there was some concern when we went and talked to the neighbors as well that if you have this building that's mixed use, what limitations on commercial use? And again, Theo is absolutely right in terms of saying that the traffic is brutal coming out of, if you come down that, I call it the intake lane, if you're coming off of Welland, you're going on to Welland Vale. To do any left-hand turn from that little intake lane onto Welland Vale to get onto Welland Street is crazy, is highly dangerous at peak hours and so on. So why not R3, R4 as opposed to like mixed? And again, I understand there's a pattern of mixed here, but would R3 and R4 not better limit any commercial use of these units?
So in terms of what permitted uses are, yeah, R3 or R4 wouldn't permit commercial. However, the rest of Ontario Street is M1. I understand, of course, you think worst case scenario, you have a big commercial unit, there's tons of parking, but I mean, every site is different. So because it is a smaller site, the scale of development is always going to be limited. So just kind of to respond to your question about potential, traffic impacts. In terms of whether or not to go R3 or R4 versus M1, I would maybe defer to the agent, but I understand that it's to kind of square off and match the rest of Ontario Street.
Okay, so really there would be no limit on someone using one of these units as a commercial use.
So it's proposed as an apartment building. You can have a home-based business in any sort of residential unit. In terms of the scale of commercial uses within a home-based business, it's limited to 25% of the floor area of the unit. So that's how it's kind of contained. But right now the proposal is an apartment building.
Right. Okay. So for example, if someone wanted to run a home daycare, which I think you've got sometimes a ratio of 5 to 1, depending on the age, 3 to 1. So again, if we're talking about the parking and the traffic issues, now you've got additional extra traffic coming into that area doing drop-offs, pickups. How does one deal with that?
So if someone were to come in with a proposal for a home-based business, we would evaluate, is it an appropriate use? What are the parking requirements? What are the impacts to the area? So that would be considered at that time.
What if they're not registering? Again, I'm thinking a
Well,
home-based
if
daycare.
they're not registered, then that becomes a bylaw issue. So if we get a complaint, then we would address it at that time. And again, the same evaluation would take place. What's the size? Is it appropriate? Is it compatible with the area?
Okay. A question for you, Daniel, and back to your whole thing about parking and vehicles. How do you propose limiting people's purchasing? I don't know if they're renting or purchasing or leasing or what your intention is there, but how do you propose limiting vehicles with these people? And that's with your parking ratio is not in par with what it should be for a 12-unit dwelling.
Yeah, sorry, just Christina, can I get like your interests here? You reside next door? What?
Yeah, I
Just
reside next door.
understand.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I said I do reside next door, yeah.
Oh, at what address?
181.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the what I would suggest, and I think this is very practical. First of all, maintaining the existing 1 space per unit for the existing Welland Vale fourplex. And then distributing the parking for the apartment by unbundling it as part of the sales for the condominium units. In this manner, you basically are establishing the demand for parking. We have a lot of these discussions in our office. A lot of municipalities are moving to parking minimums. I just read an article on the CBC that, the sky didn't fall in when the city of Buffalo did it. And I know there's a lot of fear about this, but I think part of the problem is that there's an expectation at large that we should be able and are entitled to park for free. And by bundling the parking together with the sale of condominium units, what happens is that there is this, I have it, I'm entitled, I should have a car. And it doesn't really represent the true demand for parking. What represents a true demand for parking is what someone's prepared to pay for. And my suggestion would be to have the condominium corporation lease out the spaces to the residents of the apartment at 50, 60, whatever dollars a month that they set, put that back into the condominium fund to maintain it for everybody. Okay. So it's a cash flow for the common element condo, and they can distribute the parking as needed throughout for the residents. And that way we would basically understand what the demand for parking would be. And there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that could afford an apartment if they didn't have to have a car. And there's a lot of people now working from home. They can get around and get to the grocery store just fine without one. So
Okay.
I think that's the chicken and egg conversation that a lot of planners and municipal politicians are having at large. But you got to start somewhere.
Okay. It's funny because what it doesn't account for is when your condo residents have guests, right? Or if they have children and those children have cars or additional vehicles. Some families are also 2-vehicle. We are very car oriented. So I understand you're talking about the bundle and distribution and so on, but I don't see a plan for something as practical as guests. Where are the guests going to park?
Well, it would be up to the condominium to determine what they need for visitor parking as well.
See, the problem is, and again, this is talking with the people over on Welland Vale, is there are about 4 spaces or possibly 5 over on that little intake lane that goes into Welland Vale, which usually, if you look at nightly, the current residents, there's usually 2 or 3 spots taken, and on the weekends, it's usually quite full. So this development is, I don't think it's taking into account how to deal with, like, again, guest parking or overflow, if we'll call it overflow parking. So I think as you pursue this, that has to be taken into account.
Thanks, Christina.
Okay, we'll certainly look at that.
All right, Natasha, a question for you. Is it possible that, larger issue, right? But just that whole, the Welland Vale intake lane, that turn, if you're on Welland Vale and you want to turn left onto Welland, there's usually a backlog of 8 to 10 cars during busy hours. If you sort of support a proposal of this dimension where, again, you've got those additional vehicles coming out of a 12-unit condo, how does the city, or how can the city support the existing residences or the existing residents with that traffic issue? And this is an issue that goes all the way down to the housing that's down by 12 Mile Creek. A lot of the residences we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I certainly understand that there's some concerns about infrastructure capacity when it comes to vehicles. So all of our planning applications are circulated to technical transportation and traffic staff, so they would be looking at that. At this time, I'm still kind of getting all of staff's comments regarding the proposal, but I am forwarding all the comments that I get from residents to staff. So, you know, your concerns, yeah, regarding the left-hand lane turns, regarding parking, they are being sent to our transportation staff to review and consider.
Okay. And on the theme of transportation, we all received notices about the region doing a study on Ontario Street
Yep.
To ascertain the intersection. There was also the mention of a possible bike path. So if we're talking about less vehicles, it'd be amazing to have, you know, a bike lane on Ontario, that sort of a thing. So what happens in this case? You've got a development that's coming in, you've got the region that wants to do their study. Does the city and the development team work together? Does the city hold off on making any pending decisions until that regional study is done?
So the city, there's no sort of pause or hold on development applications at the city level if the region is doing an EA project for that Ontario strip. So no, we will be proceeding with it. The region circulated on our applications, so they, you know, review it, they understand what's being proposed, and they can kind of compare with their project along Ontario Street to see if there's any conflict. But yeah, they're circulated.
Okay. Another question, again, city question, which is the existing infrastructure. So you've got, again, these single dwellings here, you're proposing to bring in a 12-unit condo. How does that impact sewage? That would be for 181 Ontario, that'd be for Theo in terms of his concern for his property. So the existing sewage already is problematic and it creates a backup because of the traffic and parking flow. Like if you look at the sewage line, it goes underneath the parking.
Right.
For the Welland Vale structures, yeah. So how does that get dealt with?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of any sort of planning application, the applicant is required to have their engineer prepare a functional servicing report. So that looks at the existing servicing capacity within the city, that looks at the projected input and flow increase from the development. And so our engineering staff will review it and ensure that there's no negative impacts to the, you know, water, wastewater, sanitary systems as a result of the development. So that's something that's being reviewed through this process.
Okay. What about like who pays for that? And what about heavy machinery damage? You know, if they're like, again, we're talking about the sewage line coming out of 181 Ontario.
Who pays for it? What are you asking? Sorry.
Well, I mean, if it's on, like once it gets to, again, I don't have the engineering background, but once it gets to the public main, right, that is city, but we've got a sewage line that's crossing through private properties, right? So if that needs adjustment, who's paying for that?
Well, yours wouldn't, your private lateral wouldn't need any adjustment as a result of this development, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, but we've also noticed that, again, you've got parking like every 3 or 4 years, that pipe needs to be sort of re-examined, or it needs to be unblocked, or, you know, it seems to be like a divot or a dip or something there. So I think what I'm trying to say is if we have a new development coming in and it is, gosh, I don't have enough knowledge about this one, but it's
okay.
Yeah. So the sewage line comes out of the house, right? And it's running underneath the ground. And if I understand correctly, the house owner is responsible for that sewage line until it hits the city, right?
It's a private lateral, that's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, private lateral, yeah. So what if there's damage to the private lateral?
As a result of the
As-
development?
Yes, exactly.
Honestly, I'd have to check with development engineering staff. I mean, there shouldn't be any negative impacts to your infrastructure as a result of the development, but yeah, I would have to touch base with staff and I can get back to you on that.
Okay. And another question for you again, Natasha, and this would refer to Daniel as well. So the city, it feels like this proposed development, people are not anti the development. I think again, what you're dealing with is people who are, they're just looking at the scale of it, right? Or they're looking at the proportion of it. The city has documents on urban design in terms of trying to match developments within and so on. So in the end, is there room for people to sit together and talk more about that design before this proposal comes through? Or is it just architects come in, they're doing the design and city looks at it and people develop it? Daniel, maybe it's a question more for you, which is there wiggle room for adjusting this? Or is this like set, it is a 12 unit, you don't really want to take into consideration other people's perspectives on the scale of it?
I mean, it's our opinion. I think that, 12 units is appropriate and it would work here. I mean, as far as the design's concerned, as I said, nothing's been predetermined as yet in terms of the final product. I think at least the impression I got from Ray was that, he is very sympathetic to traditional architecture and would like to do something that reflects that architectural style. I'm not sure that perhaps what the images that have been shown convey that to the degree in which it would look in real life. But so, I mean, at this point, this is an open house. We're soliciting comments and trying to see how we can create a win for everybody. And I think that's kind of, what I'll say with respect to being open for design ideas. Having said that, you engage an architect, they're obviously, pretty skilled at design and they have some ideas, but certainly we're open to hearing some input from neighbors if there's some particular aspects about what we're proposing that from a design perspective, they're taking offense to.
Right. Last question, not sure if I can ask it, but is there grant money or funding behind this project that's government funding?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, okay. That's it, Natasha, thank you.
I mean,
Thanks, Christine.
just to clarify, I think the only funding that would be available is if it was a rental.
Thank you. Okay, and finally, Imre.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you, Natasha, for the possibility to voice my opinion on this and for your hard work that you put in so far. I'd like to congratulate Dennis for the work. It's really, really a nice work, architectural point of view, considering the trees and everything. However, I must say that this building, it doesn't belong to that lot, and mostly because of the size. If it would belong there, you wouldn't have to change the bylaw and you wouldn't have to make 5 amendments to the zoning, or the code. So in my opinion, in the current proposal, is way too big. And there are reasons why I already listed them on the letters that I submitted to the city. Mainly and chiefly the traffic. I went around the neighborhood and 20 people in unison signed a petition to reconsider the size of the building because of the traffic issue. And it seemed to be overwhelmingly the opinion of everybody on the Welland Vale that we agree and we honor the fact that everybody has the right to develop their lands if they choose to, but it has to be reasonable. And in my opinion and the opinion of 20 other who resides on the street, that the size of this building is not reasonable for the conditions and the location of the land. The other observations I would have is the urban design. The front is way too close to the street, not in line with the rest of the street. So basically, I think you call this front setback. It's way out of the other buildings on Ontario Street on my side. So as an urban design, I don't think that's fitting the existing buildings. The second observation I would have is the sewage, which we already touched on. I already have, once a year, I have to spend $400 or $500 to clean the sewage line from my property because it's under the little driveway that is coming into the property from Vale. And as the plumbers explained to me, there is a dip. And the dip is a result of the traffic coming and going over the years, created a pocket in the sewage, which keeps the solids. And it's once a year, it builds up to the degree that in a basement, raw sewage comes up in my shower. So every year I have to spend $400 or $500 to clean that sewage from my property line to the city. And it's going under Ray's property. I understand you propose a completely new system, but my worry is that heavy machinery coming in for the foundation and the basement digging, that could be damaged further. I assume that you will make the driveway kind of sturdy for being able to handle excess traffic that will be created by the parking lot in the back. Thirdly, if the rezoning of Welland Vale property happens, that will be open up further possibilities for further developments down Welland Vale, which would give more stress to the traffic situation. So once you zone that property on Welland Vale, you open the door for further development down the street, which could have disastrous consequences of traffic. Fourth observation, yeah, you mentioned that you will try to keep the trees, and I appreciate that greatly. But as you mentioned, there is a very old chestnut tree on my property. I would say fourth-fifth of the trees on my property, 1/5 on Ray's. The 4 meter I don't think is enough to keep that tree healthy. It's a top-heavy tree. If you damage the root system, it will lose its stability. It will be subject to further damage through storms, and it could damage not only your property if you build it as it proposed, but also mine, because the branches are way over the 4 meters. So that's something also you should consider. Sixth, my privacy. When I bought this property, I bought it because it's a tremendously tranquil and peaceful piece of land in the middle of the city. Birds are chirping in the back. The house is well insulated, and it's extremely quiet. So if your building goes ahead, you will impede on my property by having the balconies 4 meters away from my bedroom. So that's something that I strongly oppose. 7, light pollution. You will have at least 15 vehicles coming in and out, beaming straight into my bedroom and my living room. As bad as already with the existing traffic with the fourplex, I can only imagine what it's going to be with the additional 14, 15 vehicles. Not to mention pollution and noise. 7, yeah, Theo touched on this shortly, the worry about the foundation. You're gonna dig the basement. I don't know how deep, you mentioned 3 meters if I'm correct. And being the Okay. You might, honestly, I don't know. So when you dig the foundation, it's awfully close to my building, and my building is 110 years old. So I'm not sure what kind of effect it's gonna have being so close, digging the foundation. And also you're gonna have a basement as I see it, right? Like it's gonna be like an elevated basement. It's not just gonna be a foundation. And lastly, I just talked to the fire inspector yesterday, and he mentioned to me that there's a code that the chimney has to be certain height from the roof. I do have an active fireplace, which is on the side of the building where I'm neighboring Ray's property. I assume your third floor will be above my chimney with balconies. So what is the plan to prevent any fire hazard? This will be awfully close, and your roof and your third floor will be above my chimney. And the same situation on Theo's side, I believe. His chimney is on your side of the property. So that's something also has to be addressed, I think. So overall, I understand there is a push for more units, and the government is supporting it, and I assume the city as well. However, I just drove around today. There is numerous apartments are for rent on 165 Ontario, 158 Ontario, and there is a property for lease on 3 Welland Street. So I don't buy the argument that there is not enough rental. So as summing it up, I don't see the reason for having such a huge building in face of opposition from 20 residents. My opposition, Theo's concern, urban design, parking, and all this side and front and back side, what is it called? Setbacks. So everything is showing, in my opinion, to the fact that this building is too big to this lot. And I'm not opposing the development of the land. Like I said, I support private rights and property owner rights, and I would definitely support a duplex, a triplex, even a fourplex. But for the sad reasons, I cannot support this building's building. It's a very nice design. It's considered. I'm sure you put a lot of work into it, but it's not the right place to go. So in a nutshell, I like to voice this.
Thank you. Thank you. So I've been taking notes from everyone's comments and questions, so they are definitely in the record. I just wanted to comment on a couple things you mentioned. One being the light concerns. So that's something that would be looked at through site plan approval. So we require that all applicants provide a lighting plan and a photometrics plan showing that there's not going to be any light spillage onto the adjacent properties. So that's going to be looked at through site plan. And then also any sort of concerns from an Ontario building code or a fire code requirements. Those are also items that will be looked at through the site plan, and it will comply with all applicable codes.
If I could just speak to some of your points as well. Is it Imre? I'm sorry if I pronounced it.
Yes, Imre, yeah.
Okay, Imre. So you reside at 181 Ontario, is that correct?
Yes, I've been here for 17 years.
Okay, I just wanted to, because I didn't get where you're making comments from, but like I recognize you had some concerns just with respect to the sewage. I mean, the issues that you're raising, we have also identified, and I understand that there is some trouble with the laterals. They're probably older pipes, as I mentioned earlier, and of course the roots of the trees run havoc in those situations. The intent from the developer side is to replace all of the sewage lateral that is within the common element. Okay, and I'll just share my screen again just so you can see what I'm talking about. So if, I understand your sanitary lateral comes out the back of your house and kind of goes like this. Okay, that's part of the reason for this irregular shape of the common element, so that we could include that. And it's also a reason actually for some of the variances that we're seeking to the platform structure. These otherwise would comply here, if it wasn't for the case of including this. Now, the benefit to you is that this portion of the lateral, or anything that's going to be on this property you're concerned, I think the lateral comes in like this, and then you've got 183 coming down this way. If you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it's coming alongside the driveway, okay? And this comes in here, and then together, I can't remember if this goes out this way or what happens here, but anyway, there's a presently an easement across this property for these two laterals. I think initially this was intended to be a laneway back in the day, and it never only got partially built. And then those go out to Welland Vale, okay? Now we've discovered a blockage or a downturn here in the sewer that is difficult to get a camera through. But all of this will be replaced to service this building, fix up this building, correct any of the deficiencies in the lateral here, and obviously make sure that the existing building is looked after. And then, as I said, the common element condo will be responsible for that. Now, assuming we replace it with PVC pipe, it won't be any problem with any of our lifetimes. You know, but in the event that it does need some service, the common element will be looking after anything within that property. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. You mentioned something about opening up the doors for future development, and again, that's why I asked you where you're living from along Welland Vale. Welland Vale, those properties are all zoned R1. They're not M1, such as 179 Ontario Street. R1 has a lot more restrictions on what can be developed. And you would have to put a number of properties together to make that work. I can tell you that in the economics of that is not likely going to happen, especially given the fact that those yards are very shallow and they go uphill onto the hill behind there. They're just not developable properties. So I just wanted to let you know that from my perspective, it's very unlikely.
Well, maybe it's unlikely, but once you open the door, it's only a matter of will to do it. Because if it will be rezoned to M1, that will open the door for any further developments.
I
mean,
am pretty
it's
sure.
easy to say now that, oh, highly unlikely. It was highly unlikely that 12-unit building will be built next to me. And it's you just put in a proposal. So that's my concern.
Okay, well, I mean, an apartment use is actually permitted in this zone, the M1 zone. It's not permitted in an R1 zone. Someone would have to get a rezoning and OPA amendment to change that. And I can tell you, and maybe Natasha can say this, but I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, staff would not support it. But
So again, why 12 units? Why can
Sorry?
it be less? Then you don't have to change the zoning and you don't have to do the amendments.
Well, the number of units has nothing to do with the variances that are being sought, save and
Of
except
course,
for
there is.
parking.
I mean, there is the size of the proposed building that is the problem, with all the side yards and the back and the front, and also the traffic. The only problem is the size of it. If you have a fourplex, then you have no issue.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Well, that's reality.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned two other points I just wanted to speak to quickly. The foundation, on this side, let me just call up where we are here. We're probably, 1.2 meters on your side and then another 3.3. So we're at 4.5 meters away. There's a considerable grade change, as you know, sloping from your property south, to the point where there'd probably be a retaining wall required on our property or the proposed property to deal with the runoff there. the proposed building is half underground, okay? So you can appreciate that the foundation will only be, and there's a big slope across this property, there'll only be, 4 feet, 1.2 meters below the current grade in some places, okay? It may be a little bit more, as I said, on your side, but there'd be a retaining wall to protect that. But because they're half in the ground, they're also half out of the ground, which permits windows for the lower level units. Okay, so that is the basement portion of it. Okay, and that's just for clarity. I wanted to make sure that you understood that it's not a full basement. It's only a partial basement, and the degree of excavation is not as much as you would see elsewhere because
Oh,
of
no, I
that.
understand it's a half basement. I was aware of it.
Okay, but that's only like 4 feet, like, meter and a half, maybe, okay? Not 3 meters or 10 feet. And the fire and the chimney situation, if you have active fires, I can't see this being a problem. I own a house with a fireplace with an open hearth, and it's as far away to my neighbor's houses, and it's been there for 110 years, so. There are codes that prevent that. The same reason there's Ontario Building Code that applies to the percentage of glass and openings along that window. You mentioned privacy as well. If you can see here, the proposed balcony on the rear is located here, and the proposed balconies on the units in the front are located here. I'm not sure what you were saying about the privacy concern in your bedroom. I think it would be very difficult angles to see, and I don't know where your bedroom is, so pardon me, but there's not a very clear view of your house from either of those balconies. I'm presuming your bedroom's on the back, but maybe I'm wrong. You clarify if you like.
Well, you will have windows. I mean, balconies or windows. Privacy is an issue there. And again, it's nothing personal here. Basically, I have an opportunity now to try to do something about this, because once the building is built, I have no control over who is going to live 4 meters away from my bedroom. And then, if I'm any issue, then it's too late then. Like I have to do something about this now. And I think it's way too big, this building, with way too many occupants for the size of the lot.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you providing comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, so we've heard from everyone.
Sorry. Theo has a question on chat.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, yeah, so Theo has asked, I assume the proposed plan includes 3 units per floor. Which direction would a middle unit be looking at?
The middle unit is looking north, because the hallway and the entrance is on the south.
Thank you. Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining tonight. As I mentioned, if you have any follow-up questions, comments, feel free to reach out to myself, and everything will be recorded in the file. These applications will be going to council within the next couple of months, and a notice of public meeting and signs will be posted on sites. But also I can email you and let you know once the council meeting date is confirmed. And then if you want to participate in the process again at council, you absolutely can do so. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a nice night.
Natalie.
Thank you.